Welcome, geometry students, to class today on this Monday the 10th. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're ready to learn some math today, and hope you guys had a nice weekend. Let's go over these announcements quickly, please. Number one, there will be a quiz on Monday. That's not right. Today's Monday, isn't it? Sorry about that. There will be a quiz on Friday, so make sure you are working hard this week. The quiz on Friday will cover what the quizzes usually cover, which is the material from this week. So make sure you're working hard and make sure you're ready for the quiz on Friday. I'll go over a little more in detail on Thursday as to what will be on that quiz. You have nothing to turn in since you took a test on Friday, so no homework to turn in unless you're behind on stuff. Then of course that's for you to take care of. And then JASA test today. Now JASA, if there's any problems with that, just shoot me off an email, let me know. But Mr. Harmon does have that test. I've emailed him, I've told him where it is, he has it, and he will give that to you when you're ready. Okay, so test today. JASA, if you missed today's class because you take the test during first hour, if you do that, the video you will want to watch tonight at your house is Geometry 10.1. Geometry 10.1, okay? Now, let me say to you guys now, all of you, all five of you, Azu, Jake, Jason, Martin, Haley, homework is due tomorrow. If any of you do not turn your homework in tomorrow, actually there's no homework today, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me go ahead and tell you now, we're going to do an extra long video today, so be ready to listen for a long time and take a lot of notes, but there will be no homework tonight. Tomorrow there will be no notes, and we're going to work on homework throughout the class period, okay? So, with that in mind, when I give your homework to you tomorrow, it is due on Wednesday, or I will email parents. We got to get back in that groove, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Your tests have been graded, and I will pass those out and go over those with you as soon as Jason has taken her makeup test, okay? So I will get those to you. They are graded, and so if you would like to know your grade, go to Sycamore. All of your grades are updated there. Call or email if you have any questions, okay? We're going to start Chapter 10 today, and Chapter 10 is about trigonometry and right triangles. We did go through Chapter 9 pretty fast because I did not think the material was super hard. Most of the material was just formulas, okay? But we're going to go through Chapter 10 a little slower. Trig can be a little confusing at times, and I want to make sure that everyone is caught up and understanding the math, okay? So Chapter 10 is all about trig, and we're going to go a little slower. In fact, you're going to see there's no homework tonight, just notes. On Wednesday, there's no homework, just notes. Thursday, there's homework, and on Friday, just notes again. So we're really going to start this first week off on Chapter 10 going pretty slow. Now, the quiz this Friday will be on this 9 weeks, okay? So the quiz this Friday is the last grade of the third 9 weeks, so do understand that. Strangely enough, though, before we get into any trig, we need to review square roots. We will be using square roots a lot in trig. So today's lesson is simply about square roots. We're going to go ahead and write this down. Here's your heading for today. We're going to look at solving, simplifying, and multiplying square roots. Solving, simplifying, and multiplying square roots. And the lesson number is 10.1. The lesson is 10.1. The date today is the 10th, if you like to keep track of that. All right, so copy all that down, please, and let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to start off by learning the difference between solving and simplifying square roots. Now, 2 years ago, if you had me in bridge math, we talked about this, and we covered very extensively the difference between solving a square root and simplifying a square root. Okay, so here we go. I would like you to copy these two problems in your notes, and first of all, write the word solve above the square root. If I ask you to solve this square root, do you know what you do? You simply type into your calculator. I mean, it really does. Let me fix something here. It really is simple. All that you do is type in the square root of 52 in your calculator and make sure you get this. If you're not, you need to pause the video and find the button on the calculator that gives you the square root. And of course, you do not need to write this whole answer out. I'm just doing that to show you what should be on your screen. So when I ask you to, are you listening? Do you understand this? When I ask you to solve a square root, you simply type it into your calculator, unless you know it already, like the square root of 16, you should know is 4. Now you can still type that into your calculator if you need to, that's fine, okay? But when I ask you to solve a square root, you simply type it into your calculator and get out a number. Now students, that's easy. But simplifying is a little more difficult. I would like you to go ahead and write above this square root that we are going to simplify this square root. Now, if you were to simplify this, here's what you would get. Now, don't worry about how I did this. I'm going to teach you a little later during this class period. But you would get out 2 square root of 13. Okay? Now, if you don't believe that I did this accurately, go ahead and take your calculator and type in 2 times the square root of 13. That's what this means right here. Whenever the 2 is right next to the radical, it means multiply. 2 times the square root of 13, and look what you get out. You get out the exact same decimal. Okay? So both of these answers that I'm going to circle are good answers. They're equivalent. But one is a solved answer and one is a simplified answer. So if I ask you to solve a square root, you just simply type it into your calculator. Alright? If I ask you to simplify a square root, then you have to do a procedure that I am going to teach you later. Do you see the difference? I hope that you do. One you type into a calculator, one you're going to have to work out, and I will show you how to do that later. Okay, let's continue on. Let's start off by doing the easy stuff first. I would like us to solve some square roots. So, on your own, or watching me do this, let's go ahead and solve these square roots. So first of all, I would like you to solve the square root of 12. Let's solve the square root of 12. So whenever I ask you to solve a square root, all that you do is you type it into your calculator. So if you go ahead and type this into your calculator, the answer that you're going to get should be this number right here, 3.46. Okay? 3.46. So if you type this into your calculator correctly and you round to 2 decimal places, you should get 3.46. Isn't this easy? This is very, very simple. If you will bring your calculator to class every day, there is absolutely no reason why any student should miss these problems. When I ask you to solve a square root, you simply type it into your calculator. So, this one you can probably do in your head, but if you can't, that's okay. Go ahead and use your calculator. The square root of 81 is 9, because 9 times 9 is 81. Okay? So, the square root of 81 is 9. Now, let's go ahead and solve the square root of 120. So, with your calculator, go ahead and type in the square root of 120. And if you do that correctly, you should get this answer right here, 10.95. 10.95. Okay, students, so really it is not difficult to solve square roots, okay? If you can type them into your calculator, they're pretty simple. And I've got to be honest with you, there really should not be any problems with solving square roots. You can use a calculator every time. They should be pretty easy. Now, I love y'all, I'm not being mean, but look, you have to memorize what the word solve means. The word solve simply means use a calculator. Okay? It really is that simple. Alright, let me grab a drink here and we'll continue on. Now let's tackle a little more difficult task. Let's start simplifying square roots. So let's go back to the very, very first thing I talked about here, in which I showed you the difference. Remember, when you're solving a square root, you type into your calculator and you get out an answer. When you're simplifying a square root, you do a bunch of work and you end up left with a radical like this, with some numbers, okay? And that's what I'm going to show you right now how to do this, all right? So here we go. Let's start simplifying square roots. Now, the first thing you need to know when it comes to simplifying square roots is a list of perfect squares. You need to know it. You need to be able to list this list of numbers out. So here it is. And by the way, it is so easy. It is not difficult. Here's the list. 2 times 2 gives you 4. 3 times 3 gives you this number. 4 times 4. 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 9 times 9, 10 times 10, 11 times 11, and 12 times 12. Do you see what I'm saying? This list is very easy to memorize, and every time you take a test or a quiz, listen to me, just stop at the beginning of the quiz or the beginning of the test and simply write down this list. Say to yourself, 2 times 2, 4, 3 times 3, 9, 4 times 4, 16, 5 times 5, 25, and list out the perfect squares. These are called perfect squares because you can take the square root of them and get out a whole number. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 49 is 7, etc., etc. And so these numbers are called perfect squares, okay? And it's the first thing you need to know when it comes to simplifying, not solving, simplifying perfect squares. Remember, when you're solving or simplifying square roots, when you're solving a square root, you use your calculator, all right? When you're simplifying a square root, you use this list of numbers right here. These numbers will help you simplify square roots. Let's do some simplifying, okay? So go ahead and copy down this first problem, the square root of 12. Now, if I asked you to solve that, you would type it into your calculator and you would be finished. But I'm asking you to simplify it. So you come over here and you look at your list. Do you notice any numbers that go into 12 evenly? Well, I notice 4 does. So watch what I do. I divide 4 into 12 and I get 3. So I write 4 times 3. Now you know what a lot of students do? They want to write something like this. 2 times 6, which is still 12. But I have a question for you. Is the number 2 anywhere on your list over here? No. Is the number 6 anywhere on your list over here? No. So that's not going to help you. You need to have at least one number that's on your list. That's why I said to you the first thing you do is you look at your list and you say to yourself, self, does anything on this list go into 12 evenly? Well, 4 does. So I write 4. Then, of course, the other number has to be what? 3, because 4 times 3 is 12. Now, here's why you did this. You do not know the square root of 3, but you do know the square root of 4. So cross off the 4, and in your head, take the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2, so you cross off the 4, and you put a 2 on the outside. And that's it. Now, Mr. Earhart, how do you know you're done? Well, here's how you know. Do any of these numbers over here in your list, do any of those numbers go into 3 evenly? No, none of them do. So you know you're finished. It's that easy. So 12, the square root of 12, if you simplify it, is 2 times the square root of 3. Or some say 2 square root of 3. Or some say 2 on the square root of 3. I just say 2 square root of 3, okay? All right, you can work ahead or watch me. Let's simplify the square root of 45. Okay, let's look at our list over here. Do you see any numbers that go into 45 evenly? Yes, right here, the number 9. 9 goes into 45 evenly. So I'm going to go ahead and put the square root, I'm going to put a 9, and obviously the other number has to be what? Wouldn't it be 5? Because 9 times 5 is 45. Now, you do not know the square root of 5, but you do know the square root of 9. So cross off the 9, it's gone, and the square root of 9 is 3. So you took the square root of 9, it's gone. On the outside, you put a 3, and you're left over with a 5 on the inside. Now, you know that you're finished because none of these numbers over here in this list will go into 5 evenly. So the square root of 45 simplifies to 3 square root of 5. Now, if I ask you to solve the square root of 45, you should know right away what to do. That's easy. You type it into your calculator, and you would get 6.708. if I asked you to solve it, but I didn't. I asked you to simplify it. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our last problem here. Let's simplify the square root of 20. Now, do any of these numbers over here go into 20 evenly? Yes, 4 does. So I'm going to go ahead and put the square root of 4, and obviously the other number, 4 times, the other number would have to be a 5, because 4 times 5 is 20, which is what I had up here. And then you do not know the square root of 5, but you do know the square root of 4. So cross off the 4, put a 2 on the outside because the square root of 4 is 2. And you're left over with the 5 on the inside. There, you did it. The square root of 20, when you simplify it, is 2 square root of 5, or 2 times the square root of 5. Okay, let's go ahead and continue on, and let's see what else we can come up with. Okay, now let's try one where we both simplify and solve. Okay, so I'm giving you one problem, the square root of 112, and I want you to solve it, and I want you to simplify it. Now, if you think you're doing pretty well and you want to pause the video, then go ahead and do that. Work these out on your own and then watch the video. If you want to watch me, that's fine too. Whatever you feel like you need to do. Okay, here we go. Solving the square root of 112. Well, I mean, if I ask you to solve a square root, you simply type it into your calculator, and the square root of 112 is 10.58. Now, you might have rounded to a different place. You might have put 10.6 or 10.530. That's up to you, but you should get something like this for your answer. Now I'm asking you to simplify the square root of 112. Well, let's go back a page. Let's see if we can't do a little copying here. There we go. And let's take a look at our list of perfect squares, okay? Will any of these go into 112 evenly? Well, let's see. 4 does. 4 goes into 112 evenly. So I'm going to go ahead and put 4. And then my other number would be, let's see, 2, 8, 32. I believe it would be 28, because 4 times 28 is 112. Okay? Now, which one of these numbers do you know the square root of? You do not know the square root of 28, but you know the square root of 4 is 2. So you cross off the 4, put a 2 on the outside. So now we have 2 square root of 28. Now, we're not finished. You have to see if any of these numbers go into 28. Well, 4 goes into it again. So now I'm going to write, bring down your 2 on the outside. Where the 28 is, I'm going to write 4 times 7. Okay, so we started off breaking down 112, and we broke it down to this right here. Now we're breaking 28 down into 4 times 7. Well, you do know the square root of 4, it's 2, so we're going to put a 2 on the outside. Now when you put a 2 on the outside, what do you do to these two numbers? You always multiply them. So 2 times 2 is 4, and on the inside I'm left over with 7. So there's the answer, 4 square root of 7. So we took one problem, I asked you to solve it, and I asked you to simplify it, okay? If you would have stopped right here, you would lose points on a test or a quiz, okay? You have to simplify as far as you possibly can. Lastly, let's glance at multiplying square roots. Okay, multiplying square roots. It is a very simple procedure. Okay, very simple procedure. Here we go. Let's start with this problem right here. Anytime you're multiplying two square root numbers together, you simply multiply the outside numbers together and you multiply the inside numbers together. Now, notice here we have an outside number of 2 and an inside number of 3. And over here we don't have an outside number, so if you would like to, feel free to write a 1. Now if you're going to multiply these two square roots together, you multiply the outside numbers together. 2 times 1 is 2. And you multiply the inside numbers together. 21. Now that you're done multiplying, you have a choice. Did Mr. Earhart ask you to solve the problem? Or did Mr. Earhart ask you to simplify? Okay, and I should always tell you, okay, now if I asked you to solve it, you would type that into your calculator. If I asked you to simplify it, then you've got to use your list of perfect squares. Now, if I asked you to solve it, 2 times the square root of 21 is going to be 9.17 if you round correctly. 9.17. If I ask you to simplify this, here's the problem. None of these numbers over here go into 21 evenly. So if that happens, then you have simplified it. You've simplified as far as it can go. So there's the simplification. So if I ask you to solve it, there's your answer. If I ask you to simplify it, there's your answer. Okay, let's go ahead and try another problem. You can work ahead or watch me. Let's try this one over here to the right. We're multiplying two radicals together. So first of all, you multiply the outside numbers together. 5 times 4 is 20. And then you multiply the radicands together. That's radicands. And that's what you call the inside numbers whenever you have a square root. They're called radicands, okay? So you multiply the inside numbers together, or the radicands. So 3 times 72 would give you 216. Now at this point in time, you have to know whether I've asked you to solve it, and I'll make sure you know on a test or a quiz, or if I want you to simplify it. Okay? If I want you to solve it, you would go ahead and type into your calculator 20 times the square root of 216, and if you type that in correctly, you would get 293.94. Okay, that is if I ask you to solve it. If I ask you to simplify it, well, we're going to have to do some work. So here we go. 20 square root 216. Well, first of all, 4 goes into 216, okay? So if you need to use a calculator to see how many times it goes into it, that's fine. It's going to be 4 times 54. 4 times 54, okay? So you do not know the square root of 54, but you do know the square root of 4. So cross off the 4, put a 2 on the outside, and there's already a 20 here. So 2 times 20 is 40, and now you're left over with a 54. But hold it, we can also simplify 54. 9 goes into 54 evenly. 9 does. So instead of having a 54, I'm going to go ahead and put 9 times 6. Now, which one of these two numbers do I know the square root of? Well, it's not 6, it's 9. So cross off the 9 and put a 3 on the outside. When you do, multiply those numbers together, and 3 times 40 is 120, and you're left over with the square root of 6. Well, there's no number in your list over here that goes into 6 evenly, no number at all. So you've simplified it. So there we go. So the answer to this multiplication problem here, it could be two different answers depending on whether I ask you to solve or simplify. Okay? Alright, let's continue on. Now let's take a look at this last problem. Take some really good notes here, please. Probably one of the best ways to solve a problem like this is to go ahead and just simply write out the two radicals, because it does say that we are taking 3 square root of 7 to the second power. So what I would recommend is that we go ahead and write 3 square root of 7 times 3 square root of 7. Okay? Now, whenever you're multiplying radicals, you multiply the outside numbers first. So 3 times 3 would be 9. And now you multiply the radicands, or the two inside numbers, and 7 times 7 is 49. So we have 9 square root of 49. Now, if you type this into your calculator, and feel free to go ahead and do that, if I asked you to solve this, you would get 63. If you want to test that, go ahead and type it in. 9 times the square root of 49. You will get 63. Okay? If I ask you to simplify it, well, students, please think about this. Really dig deep here and think, okay? If I ask you to simplify this, you would also get 63. Because look at 49. 49 is on your list of perfect squares over here. In other words, you know the square root of 49. I'm amazed at how many students do this. Are you ready? I am amazed at how many students see the square root of 49 and they say, oh, I know the square root of 49. It's the square root of 7. Well, that's not true. 7 times 7 is 49. And so the square root of 49 is not the square root of 7. Okay? The square root of 49, now watch this, the square root of 49 is just 7 because 7 times 7 is 49. So watch this. I have 9 times the square root of 49. So bring your 9 down, and then the square root of 49 is just 7. So 9 times the square root of 49 is the same thing as 9 times 7, which equals 63. So in this case here, it doesn't matter if I asked you to solve the problem or if I asked you to simplify it, you would get out the same answer either way, 63. Okay? Now, I told you it'd be a long video today. I'm pretty much done teaching, but I want to show you a couple more things that you need to be used to, okay? I would like you to go ahead in your notes, and I want you to draw a right triangle, okay? And that is not a right triangle. Let me try that again. All right, now, on this right triangle, let's go ahead and label some parts here. We'll call this 2, and I guess we'll call this a 3, and we're going to call this x. Now, remember how we've learned to use Pythagoras Theorem to find missing sides of a right triangle? The only difference is now is what they want us to do is they want us to either take our answer in the end, and what do they want us to do with it? They either want us to solve it or they want us to simplify it. That's the only difference. So real quick, using Pythagoras Theorem, you can work ahead or watch me. I would like you to solve for the hypotenuse, okay? Well, remember, Pythagoras Theorem is leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So one leg is 2, the other leg is 3, and my hypotenuse is x. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 plus 9 is 13. So I have 13 equals x squared. Now watch carefully what I do next, okay? In order to get x by itself, you're going to take the square root of x squared. But you cannot take the square root of one side unless you take the square root of the other side, okay? Now, the square root of x squared is x, and we're going to leave for right now the square root of 13, just simply the square root of 13. Now, be ready in your homework tomorrow when I give you homework to either solve this answer using a decimal, okay? So the square root of 13 would be 3.61, and that's fine if that's what the directions say. Or they might ask you to write your answer in radical form. Let me say that again. They might ask you to write your answer in radical form. And that's the exact same thing as just saying this. Simplify. Okay? If the book asks you, or any future math class, to write your square root, or any root for that matter, in radical form, they're just saying simplify. So, if I try to simplify the square root of 13, you'll see none of these numbers right here will go into 13 evenly. So I cannot simplify this any further. So this would be radical form right here. That's radical form, or what else form? Simplified form. And this is solved form. Okay? Let's take a look at one more problem and we'll be finished for the class period. Okay, let's draw one more right triangle here, and then we'll be just about finished. Let's call this leg 3. Let's call the hypotenuse 7, and let's solve for this leg here. We'll call it y. Okay? So we know the formula to solve for a missing side in a right triangle is leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. Okay? So for one leg, I'm going to put a 3. For the L here, I'm going to put a y squared. And for my hypotenuse, I'm going to put a 7, which would be 7 squared. Okay? Now, 3 times 3 is 9. Y squared is simply y squared. 7 times 7 is 49. Alright? Now we want to get y by itself, so we bring this positive 9 over and we make it a negative 9. So now we're left with y squared equals 40. Now at this point in time, we take the square root of both sides. You can do this in your head here. The square root of y squared is y, and the square root of 40, of course, is just square root of 40. Now, at this point in time, the book is either going to ask you to write your answer in radical form, which just means simplify it, or the book is going to ask you to write it in decimal form, where you simply type into your calculator. Well, if the book asks you to solve it, you would go ahead and type into your calculator, and you would get 6.32, and that is your solved answer. Okay, but if you were asked to simplify this, then you have to use your list of perfect squares. And I can put it up here real quick for you. It's right here. If you'll look at your list of perfect squares, you will see 4 goes into this number evenly. So for 40, I'm going to go ahead and put 4 times 10. I do not know the square root of 10, but I do know the square root of 4, so cross it off. The square root of 4 is 2. Put a 2 on the outside, and you're left over with a 10 on the inside for your radicand. Now, none of these numbers over here, 4, 9, 16, 25, etc., none of those numbers will go into 10 evenly, so you're finished. So if I ask you for a solved answer, this would be the answer. If I ask you for a simplified or radical form answer, it will be this answer here. Okay? I hope this has made sense. Call or email if you have any questions at all. And tomorrow we're going to work on a bunch of homework in class to allow you to practice this and reinforce this information. Okay? Hope you guys have a good day today.